And we're back. We're live. We're here. We're rolling. It's Thursday. Welcome to ND Talk. I'm Kyler. Jonathan's out. He's on a business trip, but I'm joined by Lisa. We got Lisa Hermosillo in to join us today. Thanks for stopping by, Lisa.
Absolutely, Kyler.
I look forward to getting through some fun discussion stuff we have today. We're going to go on, obviously, Governor Armstrong had some big vetoes yesterday. We had some big legislative updates we're going to cover. Then we were both at city council meeting this week, so we can talk about some stuff that went on there and maybe touch on a couple national things on some where the Dem party's going and some things that have happened with you recently, too.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Well, I think best place for us to start, some of the biggest headlines. Kelly Armstrong vetoed a couple big bills yesterday in the legislature that came through. One of the big ones, we'll start with the library one. That one was more contentious in the legislature. It was very tight votes, and it long story short, it was banning some bills, or some books, excuse me. Yep, it was banning some specific books, sexually explicit content, and the governor stepped up and vetoed the bill.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were actually not quite expecting that. I was kind of shocked when I heard about that, but I think that there was just such an overwhelming amount of support and people being vocal about it that it kind of made sense that he did do that.
In the article, he had like over 2,000 people reach out to him, and it was a big turnout. Now, obviously, he vetoed it, so there's always the chance that the legislature could rescind his veto with a 2/3 vote. Yes. But with this one specifically, as tight as the votes were, I can't see it happening.
I want to be optimistic, but this one is very difficult. I don't think they're going to get the votes. Fair. I really don't.
With this one, and there was a lot of talk with this one going out throughout the whole legislative cycle too. I think was it last month there were some silent protests at libraries across the state.
Yes.
Were you were at one, weren't you? You were at the one here in Minot.
Yeah, I went to the one here in Minot, and they had a great turnout, and it was great to see. And I don't know. I do a lot with like social media, so I got my phone out and I started to live stream it. And one little piece to it that I added to it, I really wanted to make it personable. Sure. And so I started asking people, what book did you bring to read today? And it was just a really cool time listening to people talk about why they brought that book and why it was important for them to be there. So I had a lot of fun. I brought my kids to it too, so they had fun.
What book did you bring?
I actually did not bring one because I was planning already to do the live streaming. So I did not bring one.
Makes sense.
But my kids did.
Is there anyone that stands out for a book that was brought there to you?
Shoot.
If you can remember, it's been a while too now.
Well, I know a couple people did bring the Constitution.
Sure.
So
okay, there you go.
That was a popular one.
Article 1.
Yep. I cannot remember one specifically, but it was just that personal tie that they had to the book, and a lot of them had a lot of like relation to what was going on in the world today. So they just, it was great.
Yeah, and there can always be some compromise on an issue like this, like maybe have some specific books sectioned off, where a student has to maybe ask the librarian to read them or something along those lines. Right. But to just straight out ban the books out of the library, I think in general it's an overreach kind of thing. And that's what Governor Armstrong said. I think his exact quote is, it's a misguided attempt to legislate morality through overreach and censorship. Yeah. And I think that's a great point by him.
Right. One compromise that I kind of thought about was you can still have these books, but maybe do like a color coding system so that these books that would have that content in it has a very specific color, and then have like a waiver that parents could fill out and sign off on saying, I give permission for my kids to have access to these books. And so if there's a child that would come up or a student and they'd want to check this book out, and then they'd have like something like a flag come up or something on the computer and say, hey, this is, your parent didn't sign off on this, and that would just open and lead for that discussion at home. Yeah. And so then now you have the child and the parents talking about it. But I just thought, I don't know. And just a compromise, right? Just maybe something to look at, but I don't know if that would even be.
I like that. Though.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
You still keep the books, but still give parents that choice.
Because with what I was saying, where, they go through the librarian, there's always workarounds where maybe the librarian's not the most ideal person to be handing out books or something, just whatever it might be.
Right.
Yours, it gives the parents a lot more control over the issue. I like that idea. I think that could work great. Maybe the legislature could think of something in that nature, but we're already winding down the legislative cycle at this point. So it might not happen this year. Yeah. Might have to be a 2-year kind of problem, but I think something like that could happen in the future, because something like this happened in the past and it was also vetoed by Governor Burgum at the time 2 years ago.
Right.
When a lot of those other, for lack of better words, culture war bills came forward at that point, and he ended up vetoing a couple of them, and one was really similar to the one that Governor Armstrong vetoed here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would just save on the financial part of it as well. Be less money than doing renovations and.
Yeah, having to actually go through and take everything out, and then what happens then? We burn them? That's not a great look.
Yeah, definitely not.
But anyway, so that's the first one. Then he also vetoed a second one, which was the private school voucher bill. And so he already signed the charter school bill into law. That one is happening. North Dakota will have some public charter schools being developed in the next few years. But he did veto House Bill, which one was this? 1540, which is the private school voucher bill. And however, on the flip side of that, he did say that he supported Senate Bill 2400, which allows public dollars to be used for private school tuition, but also would establish education saving accounts for public schools and homeschooled students. So it adds a little bit more equity across the board with that compromise, rather than just straight up having the vouchers go out to, I believe it was largely non-public school students.
Yes. Yep.
And yeah, I think this one is this one could possibly, it was also a very narrow vote. It was 49-43 in the House and 27-20 in the Senate. So there's a fair chance that it would take quite a bit of effort to get the votes necessary to rescind the veto on this one as well. But never say never.
Yeah.
But
especially
also
nowadays, you just never know.
Without a doubt. But I think it would probably be a lot more likely that Senate Bill 2400 probably gets passed in the long run.
Yeah, I agree.
Any takes on the education savings accounts in general?
Well, it's kind of hard not to think about what's happening at the national level. And so I think, like you said, there was that compromise with just what you're seeing happening with public schools. I think, yes, this was probably the best course of action that Armstrong could have taken. But it's a very touchy subject for people, especially when you're talking about, money and the abilities that private schools have or charter schools than what public schools do. And so I think there's a lot of people that are still feeling kind of upset that this was even brought up, to be honest.
Fair enough.
So,
and looks like something will come of it, though, at this point. We're already going to have charter schools, and there's likely, if that's some kind of education or voucher programs, probably going to end up going through this year. And on top of that, kind of roll through a little bit more the legislative roundup. A couple other interesting things. Did you see about the one where the state passed some of the ballot access changes that happened from one of the Trump's executive orders?
So I heard a little bit about it, but I have not looked into it a whole lot.
Okay, so pretty much what it is it changes the deadline for North Dakota absentee ballots. So instead of the ballot having to be postmarked by Election Day, they have to be mailed by Election Day in this kind of situation, or they have to be at the election center by Election Day kind of thing. So it's not like it definitely can have a chance to, take away a little bit of votes. But I think if someone's being proactive, this shouldn't make a difference.
Right. Yeah. And I always say there's really no excuse. There really isn't. Yeah. And maybe by putting that deadline in there, maybe it will kind of prompt people to be, like you said, more proactive and staying on top of things. And I think a lot of people too, when you hear about, the Election Day, they think, okay, now it's a done deal versus, okay, now we still have to go through and count everything. But I think people think of it that way. So might as well just make that the deadline on Election Day. And I think that would maybe lessen some of the confusion because there was a lot of confusion, I know, last year for people on that process.
No, exactly so. And it's one of those things that it can shut down some of the talk of issues arising afterwards
Yes.
too. And also just as an accountability and a, time saving thing, it makes sense to have everything on the day of and try to get it done. And that way, again, you don't have people afterwards saying that there were issues, inconsistencies,
Yes.
anything like that. And because there's always a possibility for it to happen. And when you have more votes added to it a couple days after election, I mean, it can always cause questions.
Right.
It makes sense when you look into it where it comes from. However, that possibility is always open at that point.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Then a couple other fun ones. The Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, which is set to open next summer, just got some additional funding from the state, $50 million in state funds, and then an additional $20 million loan. And they've already raised, I believe, $100 million in private donations. And it's, total, it's going to be over a $500 million project. But this is something that's been funded at least partially from the feds, but there's some questions with how that's going right now.
Right.
And where all that's going to end up coming from in the long run. But I have a feeling that this was one of Doug Burgum's. This was one of his babies when he was in the governorship. And as Interior Secretary, he'll have some influence on funding coming to this. So if he has anything to say about it, and maybe he won't, but I feel if he has anything to say about it, this will continue to get funded federally.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, I personally love to see it. I am a huge Theodore Roosevelt fan. I love Medora. I can't wait for this to open next year.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
I think so. Plus, North Dakota will have a presidential library.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're going to head down there when it opens, right?
Oh, you're darn right. Yeah, July 4th, 2026 is the expected date. We'll see if they hold to it or not, but
All right.
that's the plan, at least as of right now.
Okay.
And have you been to Medora before? Just quick side note.
I have.
You have?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So it's not a first time thing for you then.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Love Medora. Always try to get down there at least once during the summer. I think I got one other one here for the state. Yesterday, a federal judge came down and issued North Dakota $28 million in damages for the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, saying that the Army Corps of Engineers was liable for the damages because they should have required permits at the time, and because they were a little ambiguous onto how that was dealt with. They are the ones that are effectively at stake for the protests turning into what they did.
Right.
And
yes.
Obviously the merit of them is not questioned. It's more just how it took place and the length and the size that they got to and the damage that it caused in the area, when it was one of those things that's actively trying to stop damages from happening, and then it turns into the just complete mess it turned into down there. And it's still, I think they're having cleanup issues to this day. And it's been like, 8-9 years now, I think. 2016, I think, is when it happened. And so, it's one of those things. But $28 million coming to the state of North Dakota. Wonder how that will get spread out.
Yeah. I think everyone's going to be kind of curious
or
about
even to what the extent of where it can get spread to.
Yeah.
Even. That's another part of it, too. I wonder where it's going to even end up going and how they can distribute it.
Throwing out there, maybe school lunches.
Hey, there you go. There you go. I think that's something that obviously got shut down this year. It's a consistent thing, but I never say never for another 2 years, right? I feel like that's one of the, I've said it before, I feel like that's one of the things that it would be just fine if the Legacy Fund provides.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's when you're talking $11-12 billion, this is a minimal cost at that stage.
I'm almost positive we'll see it come through again. And, just like the measure for the legalization of marijuana, they got very, very, very close.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
So I think it's just gaining more of that momentum and just maybe fixing things here and there if and when it is reintroduced. I think it might have a good chance of passing.
Yeah, no, there's a good chance, because I think there's a fair bit of public support behind it at this point too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's a matter of time. Yeah. And same with, like you were saying, the marijuana legalization one. It's been something that's come up since, I think, like 2016.
Yeah.
Obviously, they passed medical. It took them a long time to implement it, and now we've seen it on the ballot like every other year since then. And it consistently gets shot down, but the percentages grow every time.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's one of those things that maybe not next year or in 2028, but within the next 5-10 years, it'll probably end up going through.
I agree.
Plus, like, all of the states surrounding us have it. So not saying to do what the other states do just because they do it.
Right.
But it's one of those things that it's becoming more and more nationally accepted at this point.
Yeah. Well, and like I've always said, I think it would help with the workforce here, and hey, it's more revenue too for us. So.
Without a doubt. Plus, this is an unpopular take, but my always thought on it is if booze is legal, why not have that?
Yes.
But that's a
you and I share that same sentiment.
That's a whole different argument, though, too.
For a whole nother day.
Yes, we can go down that rabbit hole a different time.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up on the state stuff, anything else you want to go over at the legislature? Anything going on you want to have a take on?
Not really. I think we really covered the big ones. I know I'd kind of mentioned once before the insulin bill was really the biggest one that was on my radar, and so I'm glad that went through, and
that was passed and signed like a week ago, I think, or something.
Yep.
So that's fantastic to see.
Yeah.
Leif would have loved that one.
I know, and I just feel like there was so much that happened, but he was so what word am I trying to say here? Like influential to a lot of those, though. Like he had a hand in a lot of these because of the advocacy that he did as well. So
no, without a doubt.
To think.
Leif would be loving this one.
Yeah,
without a doubt. So with the state rundown kind of wrapped up, let's head local. We were at the city council meeting on Monday.
Yes.
That was fun.
It was.
As I mentioned on Tuesday, if you saw, I don't know, but when you first sat down at the city council meeting and looked at the agenda, what's one of the first things you said to me?
I said, "Hey, Kyler, this looks like this is going to be a short one."
I was like, oh, don't say that.
And then I jinxed it.
Yep,
I jinxed it. We were
It's
there
your
for
fault. Just a hair under 3 hours, like 2 hours, 50 some minutes. And not saying that's we've had 5 hour ones before, but like every time that it's like a running joke on the show. Every time I had called going into a meeting, like, oh, this is going to be a short agenda. 4 hours. Every time I thought like, oh, looks like it's going to be a mile done in an hour and a half.
Right.
It's perfect. And so the 3 hour meeting on Monday, we're going to blame you, Lisa.
All right. But on the bright side, I did say that just meant we got to spend more time together.
Exactly.
So
got to hang out all night at the city hall. It was a blast.
Yeah.
And I took the camera I was taking pictures. None of them turned out well except for like 2. So I got to work on my picture skills.
I think you're doing great.
Well, the 2 that I posted were fine.
Yeah.
You didn't see the other 12.
Okay.
But there was some fun stuff. Also, real quick housekeeping note before we get into it. One thing we're not going to touch too in depth on, I think today, is the liquor ordinance thing. On Tuesday, Jonathan Roscoe and I were discussing it. We had a couple miscues with the numbers and how we were adjusting things. When I put my article out yesterday, not necessarily corrected, but it's all specified where everything comes from. So on Tuesday, when Jonathan's back, we're going to address that one more in depth. But there was still a lot that happened at City Council.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start not the big one, but one of the big ones, one of the most more pressing ones is the special election date was set.
Yes.
So we're going to have special election, Minot here in Tuesday, August 5th.
Yes.
Yep. So look forward to that. Make sure everyone gets out and votes, which we never do, but
get out and vote.
Please. You're going to have to deal with us all summer. So we're going to annoy you to voting at this point, I hope.
Yes.
But for candidates, do you have any? I think we might have asked you this last week, but you going to throw your hat in the ring too?
I am not.
Aw,
Not this time. No.
Fair enough. That's reasonable. We don't need a 5-way race.
I've been asked several times, but I did have to come out with a post and just clarify and thank everyone for the encouragement, but I'm not going to be running for mayor.
Yeah, fair enough. So we have current city councilman Mark Janser, Paul Pittner, Rob Fuller all running, and then we also have Josiah Royce, who is the gentleman that put forward one of the petitions, and he also, with that petition, said that he plans on running.
Right.
Do you have any just surface level takes on any of the candidates kind of rolling into it?
I think I have a lot of respect for the 3 council members that have stepped up to take on that role. I think they're doing a fantastic job showing that they can still work together and get things done on the council beforehand. I do have a little bit of a problem with how a particular person, well, I guess it was Josiah Royce, utilizing city council meetings as a way to campaign. I think it's entirely inappropriate. The council members do not have the option to do that, and it makes sense. That's not the time and place for it. And I think he just guaranteed people not voting for him just for that reason.
Oh, wow.
I think the way that he addressed Mayor Janser was also just very disrespectful.
Okay.
And and again, these are kind of just my just personal opinions
course.
on it. I think
We've had people endorsing people
just,
the last 2 weeks, so no worries. Personal opinions are just fine right now. This is an open place for it.
Not that I don't think I would have voted for him, but that would have just solidified it for me at that point. You want to campaign. There's plenty of other opportunities and ways to do that, but to utilize city council meetings like that, I don't like it.
Sure. And so I guess a lot where that kind of stems from is it was during the public appearances section. And no, you're good. And so when they came up, obviously Josiah, he came forward and spoke and he had his say. And I think one of the big things, like you said, you could definitely say it was a form of campaigning from the podium, but also because it was during the public appearances section, it's pretty much a wide open game for anyone that comes to the podium.
Right.
And it's kind of a First Amendment thing that it's not, nothing was broken campaign wise on that technically, but you can argue like you can argue it might be a little distasteful. But it was, he went up and he said his piece, and he has been consistent since he announced where he stands on a lot of stuff. He's true. A constitutional mayor, so he plans to, if he were to be elected, stand by the Constitution anywhere in any way. And I don't know how, I'm excited for when Jonathan gets a chance to sit down with him to kind of go into a little bit more depth of what his, where he would stand by the Constitution and to what degree, and how he would interpret it as well. I think that'll be an interesting one, but again, it's a nonpartisan race, so four candidates are going to be rolling in at it. We're going to have a debate here at some point. We got it. We got it in the works. It's going to hopefully be coming to fruition in the next few weeks. We can have some announcements about it, but nothing as of yet is set in stone. But again, and like I mentioned, we mentioned on Tuesday. I mentioned it yesterday on the Daily Brief. Unfortunately. To preface that, even before I get there, we're not governed by the FCC. We're not a radio or television program, so we don't have to follow free and equal timeshare for candidates. However, we think it's in our best interest and for everyone that watches to do so. It's just one of those things. So unfortunately, we're going to pause Rob's podcast. Let's talk about it, Minot, until after the election.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, Rob, if you're watching, we love you. But unfortunately, with everything considered, Jonathan and I probably can't make it work to offer every candidate a weekly or bi-weekly podcast at this point.
Understandable.
It's one of those things. And however, the public.
I think you have a lot of respect from the community for noting that and just recognizing that as well.
Hope so.
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep it even and fair. And again, we're going to have everyone on for their candidate interviews with Jonathan, and we plan to offer everyone a spot on the live stream as well. Where they can sit down in between the both of us, and we'll really go at them. It'll be those tough, heavy hitting questions.
Good. Yeah.
But no, the public appearances were pretty eventful on Monday. We didn't talk too in depth about that on Tuesday. It was frankly one of the longest public appearances that I've been to, outside of the one in February where they were, to use Leif's term, talking about the feet man.
Yeah.
And that was one of the but that wasn't a single individual. This was, probably close to like 8 people.
Yeah, I was going to say at least 8 or 9 people.
Yeah, it was
at
a
least.
full house. It was a packed city council hall to start too, because there was a lot of people, not just for the public appearances. There was a lot of local church and daycare leaders that were there for the childcare issue, which we're going to discuss as well here coming up. But any takeaways from the public appearances outside of Josiah?
No, I think there's a lot of people really concerned about the flock system. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's been, at least a couple weeks now, but that seems to be another recurring issue that people have. And talking about, Minot PD and the implementation if they were to go through with this. So I found that really interesting to listen to. And then, of course, there were a lot of people that came up about, I think it was the last one was about the daycare measure as well. And
one thing, before we get on to that as well, one thing that's kind of interesting with what you just mentioned, I'm blanking now, but no, you're good. We were, anyways, childcare. That's what we were going to lead into. The big development with that, with a 3-3 vote. It originally got voted down 4-2. We discussed this on Tuesday, but we'll go over it with you because I think you're going to have some interesting perspectives on it. It was 4-2 voted down originally at the prior city council meeting. However, this week it came back up. Alderman Paul Pittner, who is now also running for mayor, brought it back to the table, and there was a lot of vocal communication, we'll say,
Yes.
online about it, one way or the other. A lot of it was positive. However, going into the meeting, it ended up getting shot down. Well, it didn't fully get shot. It was a 3-3 tie.
Yep.
And before we get into the full childcare aspects, do you think 3-3 ties are something that's going to be
a recurring issue?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You think
Yeah,
so
and
over the summer?
Yeah, I think that's a big concern that a lot of people have is we spend all this time with the debates and hearing from people, which is all constructive and really good. It needs to happen. But then we end up with a tie, and then people are just kind of like, okay, we're not getting anywhere with this. And so I think there's a lot of people that would like to see that 7th spot filled just for that reason, so that we can make some headway on when it comes to the voting.
No, without a doubt. And that's a great point too, because I think everybody should, if you have anything to say, please come to the personal appearances.
Yes.
Come and speak on whatever's on your mind, especially if it's something relevant to the night. But I think I would love to see if there were hour-long personal appearances every week. I'm sure the council might not love that, but I would love to see if the people of Minot came to the city council meetings in enough force where we did have like hour-long public appearances on
That
a
would
week,
be cool.
on a regular basis.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I would love to see that happen from Minot, but we're working on that.
Right. Well, and I kind of want to bring up Royce again too, because he did bring up a kind of a good point. I think the first time that he had gone up, he had asked that the public appearances happen at the beginning, because there are people that look at the agenda ahead of time and then they know that they're going to go speak. But if they can do that ahead of time, would that influence some of the voting that would take place? And so when he brought that up, I was like, okay, that's actually kind of makes sense. But yeah, I'm glad that they do it. But like you said, just having extra time, and because I know not everyone can go to these meetings too, and they do get long sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really cool idea. You'd have to bring it up now.
Right. I'm looking through a couple comments we're getting here. Jane, gosh, I can barely read. I'm half blind. I apologize. But looks like you should cover the election and the candidates along with the public. We would love to. We would love with our debate. Our studio is a little small for 6 people. So if I am to be present along with Jonathan and all 4 candidates, most likely when we do host a debate, it will be available in a public setting. We're working on location, timing, and everything, but it's going to be something that will be open to the public to be available at, so long as everything works out the way we want it to.
Yeah.
But as of right now, it's something that would be available to the public. Then yeah, I think more citizen participation is a good thing. 100% so, without a doubt on that.
Yeah.
And let's dive into childcare.
All right.
So this is first off, one thing to clarify with it: this being shot down doesn't necessarily mean that the churches are going to have to pay the property taxes on the childcare facilities. The facilities that operate within a nonprofit are still able to apply for exemption, and it will likely be held up for them. However, this is a lot more pressing for those ones that are operating independently or out of like an individual's home or wherever it might be.
Yes.
That's where you're seeing, and so much of the conversation on this is it something that is going to, the goal is to keep what we already have in place. And that's one thing that was big on why we need to do this. One of the bigger counterpoints to that is this going to really draw in new business and new people to do it? And do you think it had that chance? Because it's one of those things. It can just by giving the tax incentive doesn't necessarily guarantee higher wages to the employees.
Right. And that's been a big push for a lot of people, just wanting to make sure that childcare workers are getting paid enough. I mean, it's hard work and it's not for everybody. So it takes really special and good people to do these jobs, number one. But I don't know if it will. It's like you said, it's kind of a 50-50. It could go either way, but I think with it being shot down, I think it's probably going to make people a little bit more hesitant to go into that. I think it was Alderman Pittner had talked about, I think it was him. Sorry if I'm wrong here, but about how can we incentivize and bring more people to kind of take these roles on their own. But I think having some of that funding and some of that assistance would help. It's been a long issue that we've had, and they see it out at the base too. It's hard to get people to want to do this.
Because it's one thing if it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's another thing if there's just not availability.
Yes.
And that's a lot of what we're obviously we're dealing with the expensive side of it too, but I feel like it's more acceptable if there is availability at that point. If you have, and obviously the more competition is probably going to drive prices down as well. But then now you're dealing with the lower prices for the children to come in, are the businesses able to keep up with it? Are they going to have the same, are they going to be able to be profitable at that point? And maybe, having this, whatever the number was, like $5,000 is a, rough, just throwing that number out there to go back into their pockets for property taxes. Would that be enough to justify doing something like that?
Right.
Maybe, but we won't know for sure. But I think that's also part of what the issue was this would have been something that was on like a 4-year trial period.
Yeah.
And then it would come back to city council and they would figure it out then. I think it was Alderman Blessum that was saying, hey, this being a 4-year thing is probably just going to set it into stone. Right. How much of a trial is it really at this point? We're pretty much guaranteeing that it's going to happen at that stage. And not saying that's true or not, but I mean, it's a fair point because a lot of times when you do have something into longevity, it tends to stay in place at that point. It's easier to keep it rather than remove it.
Right.
And one thing to kind of equate it to is on the bigger picture of everything with, you have I was going somewhere with that right off. Oh, anyways, no, but regardless with the childcare side of it, it's something that can, maybe they could relook at it for like a 1 to 2 year process. Yeah. Just do it for like a year because anyways, I know where I was going. Part of where they were having that argument against is there wasn't a lot of solid ground evidence on where this would lead to.
Right.
It was a lot of, we're going to throw it and see what happens because, and to be fair, a lot of other major cities in the state are doing it.
Right. And I just kind of want to expand a little bit on what you had talked about with Alderman Blessum's comments. And I agree. If we do like 1 to 2 years, it's going to keep that on the radar. It's going to keep us actively looking at it to get feedback, to talk within the community to see how it's going. Once you set a 4-year, duration, then it just kind of gets put on the back burner and we kind of forget about it, right? And so times are changing, like just everywhere it's tough right now. So I think if we're constantly making sure that we're staying on top of this, I think that's where the 1 to 2 year makes sense to me. So I did agree with him on that.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
And it would give people more time if they do have to cover those expenses. Like one of the daycare providers did mention, we need time. We can't just get hit with extra expenses. We need time to figure out how we're going to process that and navigate that.
No, exactly. And that's a big point of it. And we had a comment. The alderman also mentioned possibly a 1-year trial. That was just more of an idea that was brought up as what could happen from it, or something that could happen later. Because as of right now, it's shot down. It is out, and they will have to. I mean, I think technically one of the 3 that dissenters could bring it up again, but I feel like that's probably not likely. Right. It would have to be something that would be brought up again in the future on effectively a separate note.
Right.
And who knows if that happens? We'll have to wait and see what the Child Care Committee can do. They've done a lot of great work in the past, and I'm sure they'll continue working on this. We spoke former Alderman Scott Burlingame on the issue, and he had a great statement. You can go check out the article from 2 days ago now, on where they could go from here. Hopefully city council can, find a compromise in the future on something for that, because maybe this wasn't the best idea, but like we've said before, childcare is definitely an issue in Minot.
Oh yeah. And it's going to continue to be, that's just the reality of it.
Yep. Yeah. Until we are able to not only find more people to do it, but also find a way to make it more affordable to more people. And that's such a dichotomy that's going to be hard to dissect, not just in Minot, but nationally right now too.
I mean, just in terms of how much that affects the workforce too. Families being told there's a 6-month wait. Then some people just decide, okay, I'm just not gonna.
It's not worth it.
Not worth it. I'm not gonna work, and
we'll make it work with the one income, and one person has to stay home.
And right now, it's not feasible. It's harder to live on one income.
Yeah.
So I feel for them. I really do.
No, without a doubt, that kind of wraps up a lot of the city council meeting. Do you have any other takeaways you want to go into from city council on Monday before we take a little break and roll back into the national stuff?
No, I think that we covered all of that. Yeah. I just know not to jinx it again.
Now you know. You learned what took me a few months to figure out. So with that, we're going to go to a quick minute break, and we will be right back.
In the demanding world of oil and gas, precision, safety, and efficiency are non-negotiable. Unmanned operator drone services revolutionizes how you monitor, inspect, and manage your operations. With cutting-edge technology and expert operators, we deliver real-time data, detailed reports, and actionable insights for our valuable clients. Why risk the safety of your team or waste precious time? Our drones access even the most challenging areas with ease, reducing downtime and enhancing safety across your sites. We take the guesswork out of your projects by offering LiDAR, mapping, and inspection services so that your projects stay safe, on budget, and on time. Unmanned operator drone services, where technology meets safety, precision, and efficiency. Contact us today to elevate your operations. Yes, pun intended.
And we're back. Another great advertisement from the fantastic unmanned drone operator services. If you guys need anyone to do a drone project for you, make sure you reach out to them. Fantastic work, unmanned operator drone services. Do great work, and yeah. Let's roll back into some discussion here, Lisa. We've had some fun local stuff we've gone over. Now, you want to start, before we go on to a national scale, I think there's been some important things that have happened to you recently that maybe we could talk about.
Yeah.
Was it Friday? You had a pretty big announcement that you made on your Facebook page.
I did. Not a fun conversation to have at times, but it's proving that it's probably one of the best things that could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
For those that may or may not have known, I was a candidate for the vice chair for the Dem MPL State Party, and I decided to step away from that. It actually stemmed from my interview that I had here back on, what was that, the
couple
7th?
weeks ago
I think,
now.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, right. And
it was with Jonathan, though, so it's not my fault.
Yeah, right. Jonathan.
But
yeah, and
go ahead.
Yeah, it was about the topic that I had brought up, and I guess I can kind of get into some of the feedback that I've had since then. I've had about approximately 6 people that have reached out with a level of criticism, some more than others, but I have had such an overwhelming level of support from not just Democrats, but Republicans from all over the state saying, thank you for saying what needed to be said. This is not the first time that anyone has felt this way. Even we can give some props to Leif.
Yeah.
Honestly, we can. And I just felt like this was a time in my life to really stick to who I am. And I decided to take a different route. I feel like it's more important for me to stick by my values and to be a person that is willing to speak up and to talk about things that are challenging over maybe receiving a title in the state party. And I've shared my concerns over the last about week and a half or so of the direction of this party. And I do feel like right now more people are starting to speak up about this and not just here locally. Although I want to say I think Minot may be a game changer. I really do. I think there's a good amount of people here that are willing and wanting to make change. But we're also seeing that at the national level. And we have kind of over the last couple of years, we just don't really hear about it so much. But I was sent a video interview that that Pete had done.
Yep. Mayor Pete Buttigieg,
yes.
former Secretary of Transportation, ran for president in 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I shared that, and it was actually really good to see that because he's got some influence. He's got a big name behind him. And I just felt like right now, this is just a pivotal time for me to, kind of break ground on this. Mm-hmm. And I do have concerns of, like I said, the direction until we can kind of really be honest with ourselves and face the realities that the Democratic Party is struggling. Mm-hmm. And here in North Dakota, we're losing elections. Mm-hmm. We are. And I don't feel like we are really doing what we need to do to fix that.
Yeah, it's struggling on the national level, and at the North Dakota state level, it's it's floundering at this stage. Yeah. I mean, outside of their hubs and their bases, they're not expanding right now.
Right.
I feel like this is from an outside perspective, but they're just waiting on the populace to turn on the Republican Party, yes, and then just come back to the Dems. But
right.
I don't know if it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. Right. I mean, not in the next couple of years, at least.
Yeah. But I had just received a lot of criticism that, I felt like I had basically been subject to a purity test.
Sure.
And I don't see that being beneficial or healthy for any party for that matter.
100%.
And so I had people that, had encouraged me and told me that, based off of your interview, I don't think you should be running for vice chair.
Sure.
And
these were people that mattered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm a person that stays strong in my convictions. I am going to continue to do the work that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I stand by my interview. And as much as that may upset people, it's the truth. I do stand by it, mm-hmm, and I do believe it. But that isn't to say that, all is lost, right?
Of course.
There's, I wish the best to anyone that steps up to run for this position. I'd encourage people to step up and run for the chair, because I think until there's major changes that are happened there, I don't see much going differently going forward, mm-hmm, within the party.
Fair. I feel like I wouldn't be doing my job. Have you had any interest or thought about running for the chair yourself?
I really did. I had a lot of people that messaged me and said, you know what? Yeah, maybe being vice chair, you wouldn't have been as effective because you're, I don't want to say you're like a fill-in or a filler, but,
it's what's the vice president's role compared to the president's
yes,
role? I mean.
Yeah. And so they said, well, what about running for chair? And I was like, wow, what a major turn of events would that be? Mm-hmm. And it would be making a statement too, because then, it would be me saying, all right, well, now we're going to have the party decide, do we want something completely fresh and new? And, I like the direction that, Hermosillo might have taken us, or am I comfortable and okay with how things have been going? Mm-hmm. But in the end, I don't feel like, for as much as I am being held to, and in fact, we kind of talked about it a little bit, I felt like I was being treated as if I was already elected, or that
you were already in the role.
Mm-hmm. But I've just been really blown away by, we had Senator Ryan Braunberger mm-hmm, go public with a statement in support of me. And I just, that was really good to see. That was great. And mm-hmm, I just really think this is just going to be hopefully a stepping stone to just see things change. And hopefully I've kind of opened that door, but it's just, are we having people that are willing to receive that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I think so much of it comes to the point of, you want to be a party that is inclusive and open to everybody. 100%. You want everybody included. But that also means that you can't exclude and alienate some people that probably don't support a lot of the core pillars of the party right now.
Right.
Like, you're going to have a lot of rural people that don't support some of the things that are not just part of the party, but like a core principle of the party.
Right.
And not saying to abandon those principles, but to maybe adjust them to make it more inclusive for a lot like rural voters in the state. I mean, how many people that live by, Granville are going to be in line with, just to say it, a lot of the pushing of a lot of the culture and the mass acceptance of things. Not saying that those people should be excluded by any means. They should be included, and they're just as important as everyone else, but you have to be able to expand and win.
Right.
I mean, there's only so long that you can stand on your principles alone and hope that gets you through to victory.
Right. And we just have to, and this is truth on both ends, right? Both sides of the aisle. We have to stop shunning people and kind of driving people away because they disagreed with one thing, right? And then we get kind of accusatory of people. Well, is this person really Republican? Is this person really Democrat? It's just, no, let's support people where they are. And the different ideas and perspectives that we have, that's what grows people. That's what grows movement and change. And I struggle to see, and I'm not saying for like the whole party, but I struggle to see that within the Democratic Party and at the national level as well. But it's good to see people speaking out on that, and I do hope that things work out for them and get better.
Yeah, no, 100%. I really think that in order to fully not change, but to be able to take that next step and get those victories across the state, you have to be able to not change, but just mold your opportunities and your platform to everybody that's here.
Right.
You need to be able to push, and again, not saying that finding renewable sources for energy isn't something that needs to be done, but you also can't say that North Dakota should start getting away from coal and oil either.
Right.
That's
100%.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's a core principle in the state. You have, it's something that's going forward, and you have to be able to be open to all constituents all across the state, so you can get that support, especially from the people that are starting to get disassociated and not as they don't love the Republican Party like they did 10 years ago.
Right. And
not saying that at a national level, but specifically at a local level.
Yeah.
Like you have, since the parties really have since the Republican Party has really taken a heavy majority and now it's into a super majority, so much of what's getting done is able to just push forward some of the issues that are really at the front of the line for a lot of people. And they want to find a party that they can not just be accepted by, but also holds their beliefs true, whether that be someone that's interested in being a fiscal conservative, but also is just fine with having, just to be blunt with it, a gay neighbor that has guns and grows weed plants or something.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's one of those things. The future is molding, and the state is changing along with it. And are the parties going to be able to change with the people?
Right. And I just felt like I was showing leadership skills by being able to put myself out there and to, have those challenging conversations, open myself up to the criticism, which I did receive. But like I said, I think we just get so caught up in just the resentment towards each other. And I know like some people didn't always like that, I have friends that are Republicans. I don't look at people and say, okay, you're a Democrat, you're Republican, so therefore I'm not gonna talk with you, I'm not gonna work with you. I am the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And I would love to see someone in leadership that would lead the party have that same mentality. We can't live in negativity and think things are going to be better because of that.
That's a great point. That kind of segues us into where we're going next with it too, as how can the parties continue to go forward at the current rate? Like especially with that specifically in mind. So much of it is geared on not just a local level, but on the national level. You have so much geared towards talking points and saying that the other party is dumb because X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
They're not, this person supports this, so they have to be bad.
Yeah.
And that's on both sides. You see that across the board. I just want to see some real change happen where there's more discussions had. There's more people getting to know each other rather than saying because they say this, they got to be wrong.
Right.
And I think that's something that at least we're starting to see more long form open conversations with people rather than it just being a 30-second soundbite.
Absolutely. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier that the Dakotan is a prime example of that. You bring on people from many different backgrounds, different professions, and you might have like a certain idea of who the person is based off of what you've heard or just because of maybe the party affiliation. And then when you sit down and you talk to people, you realize, hey, we have a lot more in common. This person's a really good person. And you just see them differently. You don't see the R or, the D necessarily. And, that's why at that forum, I just had so much respect for Representative Dan Ruby, Rep. Macy Belinsky, and Senator Jose Castaneda for talking about that and showing that we have a history of both parties working together phenomenally down in Bismarck.
Yeah.
And I just wish more constituents would see that and maybe kind of mirror some of that here locally.
And Devin Mance had a great comment here. The Democratic Party is supposed to include all working people. The Republican Party supports big business and the expense of I assume he meant at the expense of the workers. And that's something that's interesting because so much has changed in the last 10 years over that specifically. Because especially during Obama's term, so much of the coalition he built was based on those lower middle class people that had felt disenfranchised and like they were being shut down by big business, especially right after the 2008 housing crash. They were getting worked over. And now in the last few years, really since 2016, you've seen a lot of that flip to where a lot of those people feel like they're more accepted by the Republican Party and that they're more behind their beliefs rather than the Democrats at the national level. And there's a plethora of reasons for that and why it's happened. But obviously you've seen a lot of that change in the last few years. Yeah. And where does it go from here? Do you think it continues to just spread that divide? Or do you think starts to find more of a common ground, especially with the middle class, where they're able to find a true home, whether it be with the Republicans or with the Democrats?
Honestly, unless something really major happens, and I might sound really crazy for this, but I really think that this is maybe an opportunity for where a third party comes in.
Sure.
Because I do feel like there's people on both sides that are just not seeing what they want. They don't feel like they can, it's not relatable, right? I have a feeling that might be a thing that could happen. And I honestly think that would be a good thing because it's giving people another choice. It's people not feeling like they're completely stuck between two options that they may not even really like. So I don't know. I feel like until both parties can really figure out their messaging and their plan of action on how they implement that and outreach, I don't know. I could see that the divide just furthers, and I don't want to see that. I absolutely don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But
as of right now, today, it doesn't feel like it's changing. Yeah. But that doesn't mean 2 weeks from now it's the same story.
Right.
And again, so much of that just stems from where they feel a home at.
Yes.
And right now, last November, you saw a lot of people think that the Republicans were going to be that home again because you had, Biden was elected in 2020. You had so much go on with the economy. 2022 was a huge year that was supposed to be even bigger for Republicans, but was stunted because a lot of what happened with abortion that year. Right. It was supposed to be a red wave. It was a red creek, and they still took back what they needed to, but it wasn't nearly what was expected coming into that year. And so then you go forward into 2024, they want to, change the economy and get back on track or whatever, and Trump got back into office. And so now I think we, at least for the next 4 years, we know where the Republicans are going to be standing at. It's the party of MAGA, and they're going to have Trump as their capstone at this point, and he will have his successor, likely J.D. Vance, be the one to follow in his steps in 2028. So they at least for the next 4 or 5 years know where they're standing. Where do the Democrats go to here on the national stage? Who emerges from the pact to really wield that?
Well, you look at David Hoag's message, right? David Hoag. Sorry,
David Hogg.
Shout out to Senator David Hoag. Hogg, sorry.
Vice chair of the DNC.
Yes. Yep. And his message was that he wanted to basically help fund your younger progressive candidates. Mm-hmm. And I think he also received quite a bit of a backlash for that.
From the DNC's, especially Ken Martin, the chair of it right now. Because I saw in an article I was reading earlier that they're possibly even thinking of getting a bylaw established in this year because David Hogg has a political PAC that is going around promoting money in safe Democratic districts to find younger, more progressive people to run against the established Dems that have been there. And so the DNC is thinking about possibly finding a way to outlaw that effectively, for lack of better terms.
Right. And for as much as we talk about losing the younger voters, mm-hmm. I think that's just going to make things worse. Mm-hmm. We are not reaching enough of the younger crowd. And I just see that on the Democratic side. I think here locally, Republicans are actually doing a really good job of that. They've revamped the North Dakota Young Republicans party or group. And they seem to be very, very active. So mm-hmm. they're doing great there. It would be kind of interesting to see maybe Democrats doing that, but I don't know. But we have to look at that. I mean, at this point, what's there to lose? Take a risk, try something different. And if what Hogg is trying to do does and is effective, mm-hmm. then maybe it's worth it.
And because there's two aspects to it. You have one, he wants to get younger people in there.
Yes.
That's big. Then you have a flip side of it. He wants them to be more progressive.
Right.
Is that the move on a national scale?
I just think there.
Or is just simply having the younger people in there a step enough?
Yes, I think it should be focused on just the younger generation. Mm-hmm. I think once you start putting in certain labels, it can kind of push people away one way or the other. I think if you just focus on getting younger blood in there, because that's what we need right now. It kind of goes into who do we have lined up at the national level for the part on both sides, right? But having younger voices, I think, would be extremely what's the word?
Beneficial.
Beneficial and crucial. Quite honestly.
And that's a great point because, like you were saying too, the Republicans have done so much over the last 8 years of getting that younger generation on their side, where you go back 15 years and Obama specifically did the phenomenal job of doing that in the first point. Yep. They really harnessed that initial step of social media when Facebook was really coming around and Twitter was just getting off the ground. The Democrats in 07, 8, 9 really took that and wielded that and got so much of that younger vote on their side. Then you fast forward 10 years and that's almost completely flipped.
Yeah.
And it's at the furthering of social media, the longer it's been going on for, the Republicans have found a way to really take that and wield it in their own way and find that next generation with podcasts and TikTok and Instagram. And they've found that next generation. So now where does it go from here?
Right. Well, I know the Dem MPL here in North Dakota, they've done a really great job. I know they got their podcast set up. I think they've gotten well over 12,000 followers now on their Facebook. I mean, they're doing great with social media outreach. And so like what you're asking is like, okay, so we've achieved that. Now where do we go with that? And I think that's where the presence in your community comes in.
That's fair.
Go to the young people. Go to your community. They have access to their social media at the tips of their fingers, right? Mm-hmm. But I think when they have people actually going out to them, I think that would make a huge difference in changing that.
It does. Yeah. That personal aspect of it makes a difference. Having someone not just reach out to you and, you get a reel on your phone,
right,
but actually in front of you talking about a message, it makes a difference.
Yes.
And so before we get rolling, one other kind of topic to touch on. Nationally, where did the Democrats go? Who emerges from the pact in 2028 to lead the party? Is it a progressive younger person like AOC, or is it more of a moderate governor, kind of like Andy Beshear from Kentucky?
Well, I mean, I would like to see a more moderate option, because I don't like the pendulum thing, because I think that it causes a lot of issues when we're constantly going, stripping everything that the last administration did, and then we're constantly going back and forth.
Yeah.
And if you get someone in there that is a little bit more moderate, I feel like that is going to make things like the transition, and just it's going to feel like less of a headache. But I think AOC, Bernie Sanders right now, they've got a pretty good movement going right now. They're drawing in the crowds. They're polling really well right now, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. I don't know. But those are the two that I've been kind of hearing as far as potential.
I think Bernie could do it again. He'd be like 84, 5 at that point.
I know. I don't know.
And also on top of that,
young people love him. I mean, that's the thing.
They did in 2016 as well, though.
Yeah.
And the DNC didn't.
Yeah.
So we have those. That's the heads of the progressive wing of the party.
Yeah.
They're on the national stage. They're the ones making the big headlines. They're going forward, getting out the vote and hosting those rallies. And we've seen in a lot of polls recently, AOC has been polling above even Kamala Harris in potential 2028 people to run.
Right.
And she would be incredibly young. She'd be like 36 or something at that point, or 37. She'd barely even be eligible to run.
Yeah.
But that could be also part of the change the Democrats want to see. Maybe, it could tank their chances, or maybe that could be something that would boost them through the roof.
Right.
It's one of those things. But also on the flip side of that, some of those progressive, not values, but points of view are things that a lot of those disenfranchised middle ground people aren't necessarily a fan of.
Right. Yes.
And so is that the way they want to go, or would like a Pete Buttigieg, like we were mentioning earlier, step up to the plate again and try to get his word out there? Because
I would love to see that.
There you go.
Yeah. It's just because I feel like I found someone that I can relate to. So this is a little bit more, I'm maybe a little biased right now, but just with that interview, and I'll drop a link after we're done here, but I'll post the interview. I encourage everyone to listen to it. But to have someone, that big of a public figure, say what we were talking about, I just find a lot of people that are courageous like that just earn my respect so much more. And I think a lot of people are going to, once we start talking more about this, I think more people are going to kind of come out from that interview saying, I think it is time that we just take a look at everything and see what we do really need to change. So
let me ask you this last one before we go, and this might be controversial. Maybe I shouldn't ask it, but I'm going to. Do you think America has a woman president or a LGBTQ president first? Likely a gay man with Buttigieg, but not that it matters, but it's because those are two of the sides that you have on the Republican or the Democratic Party right now. You have a woman in AOC, and you have a gay man in Pete Buttigieg, who are a couple of leading figures in the party right now. Do you think it's more likely of those?
I would say probably female. And the only reason why I say that is because of everything that has been happening, both at the local level and the federal. I just feel like people probably feel like that's more of a safer option.
Yeah, that's reasonable, especially right now. I mean, and it's a step that America will take someday regardless. Right. And it's something, obviously we've had a female vice president. We've had multiple run for vice president. We've had women run for president nominees, and it's something that will come. And it just depends on what party gets the message right and what party.
It's all about messaging. That's yes.
And getting the right person to speak that message. Yes. So much of that comes from that. Obviously, we've seen the personality that has taken over the precipice of the debates on the national stage right now. You have people that are able to talk, whether it be Trump or AOC, and they're the ones that end up leading the parties.
Yep.
Well, Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate you
welcome.
coming in today. It's been a great conversation. As we always try to do, any final takeaways for before we head out?
No, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by. Thanks for everyone that dropped a comment. Make sure you like, you subscribe, leave a comment down below. And as always, have a great day, and we will see you